Do good work is not a label, but a way of living. It is the constant and diligent effort to achieve a new level of excellence in one's own life. It is the hidden inner beauty behind the struggle to achieve excellence. It's not perfect, but imperfect. It is the effort, discipline, and focus that often goes unnoticed. The goal of Do Good Work is to highlight that drive. The guests I have on this show emulate this drive in their own special way. You'll be able to apply new ideas into your own life by learning from them. We will also have one-on-one episodes with me where we'll dive into my own experience with entrepreneurship and leadership. Every episode is designed to provide you with ideas that you can apply and grow in excellence in all areas of your life, business, and career.
Today on the show, we have Michele Crocker. Michele is a talent management expert. As a former organizational development and contact center leader, Michele helps organizations ensure they have the right leadership talent to generate an effortless, rewarding customer experience, dramatically lower operational costs, and implement strategic goals. She's got over 20 years of hands-on and strategic leadership experience working with multiple Fortune 500 companies. She's on a mission to ensure every CEO can sleep well at night by knowing they have the right talent doing the right things to implement their strategic agenda. Michele, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I've been looking forward to this. Michele, one of the things that I've written and I've discussed and talked about is that the biggest expense that companies have in their organization is not found in their profit and loss statement. It's found in their lack of leadership management, team management, talent management. Before we dive into that though, can you elaborate and expand a little bit upon what led you down this path to focusing and helping leaders maximize their talent?
That's a great question to start with. So you're going to hear the passion coming out of me. There's one key guiding principle that I really believe in, and that is two things happen in all organizations. Things happen in all organizations for two reasons. One, either people made them happen, or two, they failed to make them happen. So it's not the technology, it's the people. So, and there's a great book actually by Gallup, It's the Manager, where, they've spent 20 years of research just confirming what I said, which is over 70% of any organization's success, the single biggest indicator, 70% is leadership. So I really believe that if we get the leadership right, 70% of any company's operational issues go away.
It's 100%, not 100% true, but I would say it's 100% true. There's no study to back up that claim, but I do believe it because when it comes down, when you boil down and understand what a company is, it's two parts, right? Customer creation and innovation. So that's your marketing and your product development, customer fulfillment team, both the glue that drives that together and the actual brain that says that this is what we're about, customer creation and innovation, is your leadership team, is the management team, and how you're painting the vision and making sure that your team effectively executes whatever initiative it is, depending on your industry, your market, product, and so on. But let's look in a little bit diving into let's say I have 20 people on my team. Or we can talk about bigger companies, smaller companies, but for the vast listeners, let's say it's just a typical, small company, 14, 30 people. When I'm looking at my talent, besides I wouldn't say purely objective, let's say subjective opinion of the team, how do I assess a team?
Yeah.
In a truly objective manner, and also understanding the importance of it.
Right. So let's go with the importance first. The importance is every team will give a certain amount of lift, like an airplane, and a certain amount of drag. So it's very important, number one, that we identify where your leadership lift is and where your drag is. So that's number one. How we go about assessing it is, the good news is there's no HR forms. We're done with those blankety blank HR forms to fill in. And there is no deadly 360 degrees. We're done with that. There's some value in 360 degrees, but the amount of fatigue that any organization has in completing those is so high. The way I look at talent, and answering your question, how we assess the team, it is not just the manager we are looking at. We are getting views from everybody on that team that knows this individual that we're assessing. So if we're assessing you, Raoul, on a team, there are other people who know Raoul other than Raoul's leader. And so what we do is we get all the folks that have an opinion, have knowledge, have experience of working with you in a room. So normally the leader and the leader's peers. And then through our battle-tested, robust process, we ask questions around your key, or what I call significant towering strengths. I'm not saying, well, Raoul's good at filing, or Raoul's good at answering the phone, or Raoul's good at closing. We're talking about significant towering strengths. And then we're also going to talk about some of the development needs that you may have. And these are all conversations. And what we're trying to do is have open, candid, and frank conversations that create a true picture of what you are like as a leader, or as a contributor, as an individual contributor. And then we are also going to be asking some questions that we don't know about you. What are some of the key questions? Can or will? Can is a skill, and will is an attitude. So can Raoul pivot from working in the day-to-day, rise above the day-to-day, and think more strategically? We don't know. It's a question, but we need to capture that, because as we start to develop you, this is what we're going to be looking for. The other thing we also need to do, especially in those companies that are small and growing, is we have to look at where our pipeline of ready now candidates are. So if we know we're growing, we need to make sure that we understand in the team, not all jobs are equal. Some roles are more pivotal than others. So these are called pivotal roles. So if I'm in a 20-person team and two or three are in pivotal roles, for example, maybe sales, marketing, then we need to make sure that the talent in those roles are A players. Otherwise, you've got growth targets, pivotal roles for growth with C players in. And let me tell you, A players hire A players, B players hire C players, and C players hire D players. So
there's an ascending scale.
Absolutely. Nobody wants to, if you're an A player, are you going to work for a C player? And we know that people don't leave companies, they leave bad bosses. So that leads to pyramids of mediocrity in the company, from any size to a startup to, you know, a bustling Fortune 500 company. It's the same principle. It goes back to things happen either because people made them happen or failed to make them happen. So the process is we get everybody in the room. Where the skill comes is in the questions you ask. So our process is around asking insightful questions, pushing back on the BS, and letting people know that what happens in this room stays in this room.
So just having a safe environment to being transparent.
Absolutely.
But before we die, I want to go back a little bit and go and kind of expand on this and package it out kind of and make sure that we have the definition. So you talked about leadership lift and drag. What does that mean?
Right. So one of the things we do when we do talent assessment, we produce a matrix. And within that matrix, you've got what I call a typical bell-shaped curve. So at the top right-hand quadrant is where your promotals will be, promotables. In the middle, if you like, of the bell, which is on average 60-70% of people, will be in what I call the hold bucket, the well-placed or seasoned pro or expandable. I talk about these categories in a minute. And then at the bottom left is where your drag comes from, right? These are your C players. So your A players give you lift. Let me give you an example. I would rather have one A player on my team working 4 hours a day than 5 C players working 8 hours a day. Because
that makes a lot of sense.
A player is going to give me much more lift, much more productivity. And we look at leadership in 3 buckets in terms of strategy. Bucket number one is, when we're assessing leadership, we take these 3 buckets and we say, is this person a strategic leader? So that means we're here today. What's the next hill we need to climb, right? So when you get game changers, A players, they're always coming up with the new and different. They're always coming up with ways, and they're constructively dissatisfied with the status quo. Right?
So they're pushing the needle. They're trying to find out what's better.
Yes, and they're saying to themselves today, how do we thrive post-COVID-19? COVID-19's gone. They've already developed a strategy for thriving post-COVID-19. So they're thinking of new and different ways. The second bucket of leadership we look at, Raul, is execution. So once I've identified that hill and where we need to go, do I get up there efficiently? Can I get up there? And do I do it efficiently and effectively? So am I implementing a process that is, quality process, it's efficient, and it gets me up to where I need to do, and I've got all the tools I need to get. And then the last bucket of leadership, which I consider to be the most important bucket, is people. So we have strategy, got the hill, execution, can I get up the hill? The people is, as we march up the hill, are people following us? But more importantly, when we get to the top and we put a flag in and we look behind, are the people staying with us? And, I've seen this a lot of times. Leaders, bad leaders, C players can beat people up a hill, but they're not going to stay. And the A players probably would not even begin to walk up that hill with you because they wouldn't be on your team.
So it's like managing others and having others follow you. Okay.
Yeah, and creating,
or leading others pretty much.
Right, it's creating a high-performing team. If you want to judge the quality of a leader, judge the quality of their team.
100%. 100%. Okay. So then that's the leadership assessment. We've defined lift and drag. We've kind of defined a bit A players, B players, C players, and obviously the A's move forward. B's are not there yet. C's are just maybe stagnant, and then D's are definitely underperforming. But when we look at that specifically, so you're looking at specific skill sets within each, how do you identify, let's say, again, I have a company of 24 people. When I look at those team members, how do I identify you're an A player outside of my subjective view? Because I also know they've been showing up early. They've been leading new initiatives. They've been starting new projects. How do I take that and quantify it in order to see the matrix?
Right. So we do 2 things. One is we'll fill an individual profile on a leader based on their towering strengths, based on their development needs. But then we take it to another level. We also look at change capacity. Change capacity is the number one indicator for A players, successful leaders. So, for example, we have what I call 8 categories of change capacity. Category 1, 2 is proactive, right? Are you a proactive leader? Are you looking for new and different? Do you embrace change? Are you a trailblazer? So we look at change capacity. So we have categories of change capacity, which is proactive, active. Active is somebody who is not going to be coming up with the new and different themselves, but they'll follow you in the change and they get behind the change. Okay. Then we have what we call reactive, which we call group 5 and 6. Reactive is, I'm not going to really buy into that. And, they're digging their heels in. They're looking for ways to get out of it. They're just not behind you. They live in a reactive world. They live in safety of nothing changing. They just want everything to be the same. And then you have the category of blocked. Blocked is somebody who you come with a good idea to, and their first response is, we did that in 1990, it doesn't work.
Okay.
Go away, leave my office. So a blocked learner or a blocked individual to change is just we did it, it didn't work, go away. And every organization has a degree of each one of these change leaders. So we look at having our conversations around, let's talk about change, let's talk about examples of change. Where do we, and I have in my process descriptions of what each one of these categories looks like. What are the behaviors of an active versus proactive versus reactive versus what? Let's have a look. Now we have what the competencies are, what the behaviors. Let's see how Raul performs against that. And we have everybody then shape that view. So I'm gathering 2 pieces of data. One is strengths, development needs, questions we don't know about an individual. The second data I'm gathering is change capacity. What is that individual's change capacity? Because that is an indicator of whether they are an A player or not. You can't have an A player that is blocked. It's impossible.
So again, the cadence for me to do this, should I do this quarterly, annually, every 6 months? Like, what's the cadence that makes sense for me to assess the team? Because this is a little bit different than like performance reviews.
Right. Okay. Well, performance review, you're absolutely right. So performance reviews are looking back, and they're very flawed. I'm not a fan of performance reviews. They're one-dimensional. Sorry. We wanted honesty on the show.
Yeah, you're already burning the bridges on 360 degrees, HR, and I love that. I love to be able to do that. So, So look, performance reviews look back, and they're one-dimensional. So what generally happens in my experience, because I've led large teams for 20 years in corporate America and in Europe, what happens is it's the end of the year and it's like, oh gosh, we've got to fill these darn appraisals in, these darn performance reviews in. So off we go. It's like everybody just goes down the middle for the most part, or they don't want to have the candid discussions, the hard conversations at the frontier. So they'll put a C player as meets expectations. It's just flawed. And how I know this, and it's not just my hearsay. I know it because I have data to prove it. I've done over 1,000 of these assessments. I look at C players and then I overlay what their appraisals were, what their performance reviews were. And funny enough, the C player comes out as meets expectations, gets an average pay increase every year. And in some companies I've done this in, actually gets stock, which is forward looking. You know, if we're giving equity into a company to individuals, we're betting the future on them. So performance appraisals. That's interesting. So let's shift away from that thing, because that's a huge point. That's an important point. I don't like performance appraisals. Yeah. No. So then how do we have buy-in then from the team to understand how do I identify clearly the C player? And again, going back, is this quarterly, semi-annually, or annually?
Well, okay, so it should be done at least annually, and your whole HR processes need to be hardwired to support this. For example, pay rises need to be given to the promotables. Promotions need to be given to the promotables, right? Not just because we want to get rid of them and we're passing C players around, the office with the guy in the red stapler. No, that's not what we're doing here. So what we do is, it should be done at least annually. What we also do, which is really important that I haven't talked about, which is not in the appraisals, because the appraisals are looking back. This process is forward thinking. So we're making a prediction, a forecast on talent. Could RAL play a bigger, broader role in our company as we grow? So is RAL in this category of promotable, P1, 2, 3, promotable 1 level, 2 level, 3 levels? 3 levels is really rare. It means, yeah, that would be, I've never seen a P3. I've seen P2s. So are you promotable? Are you a seasoned pro? A seasoned pro, every organization has a seasoned pro. These are people who are not looking for promotion, but if you lost them, you'd be in deep doo-doo. For example, they know how the coding works. They know they have pivotal relationships with your key customers, but they're not looking for promotion. But if you lost them, times would be bad, and you need to have a backup for them. And then we have expandable, which is another bracket. Expandable is not ready for promotion, but we could give them a project and increase their job responsibility and scope and scale, so we can get more lift from them, and we can go to those folks to get the projects done. And then we have what I call well placed, just as it says, okay, mediocre, but you're not getting much lift. They're just doing the job, right? I mean, and you need a lot of well-placed people, right, by the way, in the organization.
Oh yeah, no, that makes sense.
And then we have a category in the drag section. We have a category sort of minnows, managers in name only, but in the drag section, we have misplaced. Now, misplaced is not a bad, it's not means you're a bad performer. What misplaced means is, I was doing a really good job for you when I worked in HR as your recruiter, but you took a chance on me and put me into a general manager role, and I'm failing. It doesn't mean that I'm not a talented individual. It means I'm misplaced in the organization.
Interesting.
Now, if we do not move those people around, we're doing a disservice to them, because we need to move them where they can win in a position and we can win. So that would be part of that drag, right? Because you're getting no lift from a misplaced person. A misplaced person is just filling time.
That makes
And
sense.
then you have a limited person, which is just you're better off not having them.
Okay.
That they need to be performance managed out of the company. You're not getting anything from them. So typically we do this process once a year. I go in and I train. I can either do it myself or I work with the team and train somebody in HR to do it. But what's important is not just doing a talent assessment. It's how do you deliberately hardwire talent strategy to deliver growth, which means it's like a game of chess. You're moving people around. You're planning who's going to get the next promotion. You're planning who's going to take on promotions. You're backfilling, you're succession managing. And that's really what talent management, the real value is aligning it to growth.
It's attributed to growth. It's forward thinking towards that line. And I love that.
Exactly.
So again, going back again, just to make sure that we can kind of compartmentalize and understand and walk through our listeners through this, is making sure that you do a profile. So let's say a profile on each individual, understanding the strengths that actually move the company forward. And then at the same time, based on feedback, based on the other peers' understanding, other leaders, and then like a central brain of knowledge based on that individual, where do they need to develop? Maybe they can become better when they engage with customers or clients over the phone, or on calls or conducting meetings, et cetera. Just where can they be better? Then from there is like, what should we know about? And I love how you've broke it down. Like, can they do this is a skill, and will they do this is an added. I absolutely love that, because that's actually something that I've seen when I help bring in or create or grow with on the sales side. Like, can they do this or should they do this? But will they do this is a huge game changer, because then we understand what this other person is coming in. So looking again, 80-20 strengths, what they need to work on, what should we learn more about, and also understanding how receptive they are to change, if they're making change, if they're following change, if they are hesitant to change, which I think it's human nature somewhat to be hesitant to change. And then those who are saying, like, I don't want to change at all. And that's almost like a blocked, an antithesis of a growth mindset, right?
Yeah.
So when we do that, no, I love that. So when you do that, how do I quantify this to assess, okay, cool. Let's say I'm doing a performance review on, Raul, right? Just for example's sake. How do I quantify this and identify, okay, this guy is limited, misplaced, well-placed, expandable, a seasoned pro, or promotable? How do I know, based on this assessment, how to, numerically structure this so we have an objective view that a whole leadership suite can see this individual and make that judgment call for the next best step?
Absolutely. Okay, so in answering that question, we're in a virtual room, because this talent assessment is done perfectly virtual. So we're all in a room, and we're assessing Raul. Raul's leader is going to go last on the assessment. In other words, I start off with asking everybody else in the room, okay, first of all, the leader would say, hey, this is Raul.
We're on the room. We're on the same room.
We're in the room. We're in a virtual room. Yeah, we're in the room. The leader will give us a little upload on you, but everybody knows you, right? Because it's part of the company. And then the leader then stops, and then I turn around to the room and say, right, let's talk about Raul's towering strengths. And let's talk about it in terms of strategy, operations, and people. Remember those 3 buckets. We focus on those. So I've got 3. Well, I want to know what your towering strengths are, what your development needs. And then what's your change capacity? Is Raul somebody who is active change? Is he proactive, reactive, limited? So we're making an assessment on your development needs. So we do that profile, right? Then we identify whether you're promotable, expandable, well placed. So we're putting a score which says your capacity is either a change 1, 2, and you're a P1. So you're a proactive promotable. We've identified. Everybody in the room agrees with that, right? So it stops the manager just playing favorites, because there's no,
okay.
You know what, Raul? It's the questions you ask. So when someone in a room says to me, and this is where this process is the best ever, it's dynamic, is, as you can see, I'm so passionate. When I ask, is Raul strategic? Somebody says, oh yeah, he's very strategic. The question I would say is, if your company was facing a crisis right now, would Raoul be the first person you'd want in the room to figure out how to get over it?
Mm.
So, and then we ask for examples. So it's really, this process is a conversational process. It's nothing scientific. What is important is the questions that you ask, and
That's the
dialogue
magic right there.
and the candor that's in the room, because the BS is not allowed to happen, because you can see it on a Zoom call on people's faces when someone's BSing, and you can pull it out. And really, you are getting assessed by your boss and your boss's peers and people that know you, which is way better than you being assessed by just your line manager, who most are not capable of assessing talent, or they'll leave it to the last minute. So we make a prediction. If you're promotable, we then say, what's your readiness? Because some people are promotable, but they might not be ready for 1 year or 2. So we put a percentage to that. Hey, Raoul's promotable. Is he 80% ready, 50% ready? And we capture that. And that's important. It's important for 2 reasons. One, for planning your development and planning your promotion. But secondly, it's also important because in real life, companies, especially those in hyper growth mode, don't have the luxury of waiting for somebody to be 80 or 90% ready. So they may decide, we got to take a chance on you. And so if that's the case, what we then do is look at 3 questions. When you are taking a risk, and this is good for all of your listeners, whether you do this or not, when you put a person in a risk-filled position, you need to answer 3 key questions. Question 1, what is the quality of their boss? Question 2, what is the quality of their team? Question 3, are they a quick learner? Because if you have a good boss and a bad team, but you're a quick learner, if you're missing 1, you'll be okay. If you're missing 2, the chances are you're going to fail. Bad boss, bad team, not going to put you in the role. And we must make sure that we don't fail people, that we put people in roles where we know they can be successful. So when you do talent assessment, it's very important to assess readiness. If I sat with you in your company and you said, I want to promote Linda, but she's 60% ready, I would ask you, what's the quality of Linda's team? What's the quality of her boss? And how well does she learn? And those are really important questions to ask. And then I feel comfortable to take a risk on someone if they've got 2 of the 3.
That is so smart. And this is taking it back. And this is taking it back to an art of engaging with a team, because I would find it quite, it's not difficult to get everyone in the same room, but more difficult or arm wrestling to make sure that people can speak their true view on an individual that they work with, especially their boss. So it's kind of, how do you set that stage? How do you set that stage that, let's say it's a employee and they're rating the leader? How do you set the stage so that whatever the employee says is either anonymous or unattributable to them, so that they don't get reprimanded if the leader doesn't like the feedback?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So in this talent assessment process, we don't actually have the employee in the room, and that's really important. Now, the employee is clearly given feedback. It's full transparency. Employee feedback we get from other ways. We can get employee feedback through focus groups or through engagement surveys. But this is really what we're trying to assess is leadership. And everybody knows everybody in a company, right? They know who the good leaders are and who not. They just haven't articulated it. And this is, and put a spotlight on it. What this does is put a spotlight, and it's a robust process. So what happens is if I have my peers in a room and I'm assessing my team, it's really hard for me to just lie or inflate or not be honest about an individual. What comes out of it is what comes out of this process is a 1-page bench strength report. We can do it by department, by company, by team. And in that, you can look immediately and say, wow, we either have the right team to implement our growth or we don't. Because immediately there's one bench strength report. Yeah, it's a 1-page report. And on it will immediately show how much is in your top right, how much lift you have, and how much drag you have. So the whole point of this process is we need to know where our talent is and make sure that the jobs are going to them, the right, everything's geared towards them. We need to take care of the seasoned pros. We need to grow the expandables into promotables. We need to create ready now pipeline of talent. We need to take care of the holds because they're still really important. But we need to identify who the C players are, and more importantly, what to do with them. And in my last assessment, it was a assessment of just 24 leaders, and nearly 30% were in the drag, and that was like a 1.1 million cost per year.
Wow!
Which
so you put a cost to it.
I put a cost to it, absolutely. And that's not really the true cost. The true cost, that's just the payroll cost. The true cost is much greater than that, because it's you're going to have a high performing team. You're going to have a bunch of C players, D players, because I just told you A's, higher A's and B's. So it's just pyramids of mediocrity. So you're getting a lot of hidden cost that you're not seeing. So it's really important to, in an organization, if I'm a CEO, I need to know who must I keep and who must I not keep.
That's incredible. No, I love this because it's able for us to understand the leaders, the line managers, the people that we have functioning in the company day to day, but also making sure, like you mentioned, it's attributed to our growth, our maintenance of the company, as well as cutting kind of invisible costs that we don't see happening day in, day out. But Michele, for all of our listeners out there, what's the best place for people to go to thank you for this episode and to learn a little bit more about you?
The best place to go is you can find me on LinkedIn under Cardiff Martech, and or you can call me anytime. Do you want to publish the number, or shall I just say it over on the phone? I don't mind. Happy to take it.
We can do it over LinkedIn just so we can link it out after the show.
Connect with me on LinkedIn is the best place. And my one goal is to really put talent, to add value and growth to companies by putting talent first, and really making sure that on the leadership team, is high performing. So the soft stuff's the hard stuff.
100% true. Michele, thank you again.
It's a pleasure. And thank you so much for having me on your call.